Van, but close enough. Van, it's a longer A. Yep. Mm-hmm. Can they hear me? Okay. I can hear Travis.
I just need to grab a different mic. How about now? Can you hear me okay? Let's find out.
You.
Excellent.
The audience hear you.
Excellent. Yeah. Sorry, folks at home. New microphone. And I was practicing my miming technique. So as I was saying before I had my tech mishap, welcome to the Onyx Path channel. I'm Travis Legg. I'm here today with Steffie de Vaan. De Vaan, right? Closer?
Yep.
Beautiful. Good. I didn't screw it up when my mic was working. That's beautiful. Steffie is the developer of the Legendlore role-playing game, which is currently on Kickstarter. And I had a chance to work on it as a writer. It was a blast. But I'm going to let Steffie tell you all about it, and we're going to dive right in. So, Steffie, thank you very much for taking the time to join me in the midst of the various chaos and difficulty that's going on in the world. I appreciate you carving out a little time. Let's talk a bit about Legendlore. I'll let you go ahead. Why don't you first off give me kind of the overview. What is, for someone who's never encountered the property, what is the Legendlore RPG?
So Legendlore it's based on a comic. I think it was in the 80s. Originally by Arrows Comics and then later by Caliber Comics. It's about 4 friends who discover an enchanted chest. They open it and boom, they get zapped into the realm, which is a fantasy land. And they have grand adventures there. And eventually some of them go back and some of them don't. And I think one of them dies temporarily. It was, I think, 3 comics. I think they had The Realm, that's the first one, and then they had Legendlore, which is the one that we named it after. And I think they had a couple of spin-offs. So that is the basic gist of the comics. And the role-playing game is based on those. And the idea is that you, Travis, and me, Steffie, find a crossing, which is an item or a place or a location or a spell that zaps us, teleports us into the realm. And then you and I have adventures, except sometimes you change when you cross. So I might become a pixie and probably a bard or a sorcerer. So you change, you play yourself, but you stat yourself as if you were a D&D character. And that is the basic pitch.
So it's kind of like almost as if you pass through like this filter as you go in, and you get to like reimagine yourself, right? Because you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but as you're going through the crossing, you might wind up being part of a different fantasy race, for example. Like you might become an elf.
Yeah.
So you have some a great deal of control over how you are represented in that world.
You
go ahead.
No, yeah, because you're playing yourself, we specifically, that was one of our first design goals. We want you to have full control over you. So going back to me, I am a cis white woman with seasonal allergies, glasses, and asthma. anime human. So let's say that I were to cross over and then I make my character. So I would choose a pixie, I would choose a bard or a sorcerer, and then we get to, do I in this world have glasses? Do I have asthma? I would definitely recommend you keep your race. But do I still have asthma? Do I still have glasses? Am I still as short, because I'm pretty short, as I am, or am I maybe a bit taller? So we specifically designed it so that all of those things are up to you. Because, well, it wouldn't be any fun if it weren't, if you were stuck with things that maybe you wanted to change. So the system is designed to let you be the fullest version of yourself in this magical world.
Right, and it also one of the things that I find very intriguing and cool about that too is that the reverse is also true. You know, if there are components of you that you see as you, there's no system that's forcing you to alter that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm also I suffer with it far less, but I also have asthma. You know, if I were to say, like, you know, no, that's just part of my identity, I'm going to hang on to that, you absolutely can bring that across. You know, yeah. And I think that's really neat, because it really allows each player that's engaging it to cast aside any concerns or misgivings about diving into a fantasy world as themselves. You know,
yeah,
it's very
exactly.
neat.
Yeah, and also, who am I to say? Because I might not like my glasses, but somebody else might go, my glasses are a part of my identity. And that goes for everything. People who have hearing aids or who are in a wheelchair, it's not up to me to say whether that is part of you, part of your identity. So it's up to the player what they want to do with that.
That's awesome.
We are not, Stephen, I remember when Stephen Hawking died, they had a lot of like cartoons of him going to heaven and baffling everyone with his genius. And a lot of those cartoons had him walking. And I remember people going, but he was in a wheelchair. So so we wanted to that's up to you. Whatever your identity is, the moment you cross, the magic of the crossing will make your true self align with your physical self, and it's completely up to you what that looks like.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I really like that take on it. So getting into the nitty gritty of it in terms of the crunch, in terms of the system, at what stage was the decision made to go with the 5th edition OGL for the system? Was that from the very start concept level, or were there some discussions about going with a different system?
No, I think that was pretty much from the moment on. It could have been Pathfinder and D&D, but I think right from the start it was going to be D&D. Don't at me. I personally like that system better because it's a little less heavy on the mechanics. It's very iconic. It works extremely well for fantasy settings. So pretty much from the start, the very first pitch that I wrote has it as a D&D 5th edition game.
Beautiful. And were there any areas where you found either a difficulty or an interesting opportunity in trying to bring that sort of meta level concept of this is you become the fantasy hero, in trying to illustrate that through the system? Was that something that you ran into any issues with, or is that where the magic of the crossing really kind of helps smooth out those bumps?
Yeah, the magic of the crossing does help, but one thing that I find difficult about D&D 5th edition is racial bonuses. One thing I should say, that we don't have races in Legendlore, we have people. We consistently call them people. But I find it odd that every elf, no matter their upbringing, would have the same bonuses. So what we did with Legendlore is we made them cultural bonuses. So we said, if you're an elf, based on your upbringing, these are your most likely bonuses. If you don't like them, you can drop people bonuses entirely and go to classes, and we have class bonuses for you. But you could also say, I'm an elf, but I was adopted by dwarves, and I'm going to pick the dwarf bonuses. Because I don't know, that just always, some things I can see, like dark vision, that strikes me as a biological thing.
Right.
But an affinity for bows sounds cultural to me. So
Right.
So we're treating them as cultural bonuses and not as innate bonuses. But we are assuming that if you cross, that you become an elf because you have an affinity with those bonuses.
Right.
That would fit you.
There's some sort of a tie to that culture. It would be less likely for you to cross as an elf who was adopted by dwarves.
Yes. Exactly. So, but you could skip the people bonuses entirely and just go for a class bonus instead.
Excellent. And that does bring up an extra option that's available as well, though, right? Because you can play characters who are realm-born. If you want to step away from the whole representing yourself as the hero, there are options there for you as well. So even if your group is you have 4 players and 3 of them are really jazzed about the idea of being themselves, and the 4th one's like, I really don't want to do that. They have a route they can go. And so how does that function any differently than sort of your standard character creation if you decide to go with a realm-born character? What are the differences?
Yeah. So in the comics, they meet a hairfoot and an elf in the first couple of issues. So the idea would then be that you are that person who they meet and who takes them onto this journey. What it works, we have backgrounds. Actually, we've got backgrounds for humans from Earth, and we've got backgrounds for realm-born. So if you're a human, you could play the activist, or we actually have a role-playing fan background, or the artist, or the working poor, or whatever your background is. If you're a realm-born, then we're going back to the cultural side, because we didn't want to. So I don't think people are born innately stronger or faster. I mean, some of them, as in, if you have a very big mom and a very big dad, then odds are you are going to be tall. But you can't just look at people as a group and go, all of those are tall and all of those are tiny. So what we did is, rather than give you a bonus because you're a dwarf, we would go, this is your background, and you are raised in a certain nation, which goes back to the idea of you get a bonus because that is the culture that you grew up in, and right. they have a penchant for doing things a certain way. So you started like that. You would probably get your cultural bonus and not take your class bonus, but other than that, character creation is the same.
That's awesome. And there's a similar mechanic in terms of background, specifically in Scarredlands as well, where it's like a division where you have like your cultural and then regional, basically. So what strata of society were you in, and then what part of the continent are you from?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little.
That sort of thing.
Let's, if you don't mind, let's dive a little bit into the world, into the realm itself. Speaking of these cultures and regions, nations, can you give us a little breakdown of the world this takes place in?
So when you cross, the comics take place in East Azoth, and there's a mountain range, and then West Azoth on the other end, and we know a little bit about the West, but the comics mostly in the East, so that's what we focused on. But the fun thing is, when I was reading comics, because I read all of them, of course, for the project, I read them and I was going like, this looks like medieval France. This is clearly Italy. Like, this is definitely the Notre Dame Cathedral. So that then inspired the idea of, so what if travelers are not that rare? what if there are semi-regular crossings between the realm and Earth, which also means that there was a cross-pollination of art and architecture and culture. And we leave it completely up to the DM if you want to say that somebody from medieval France went to the realm and then taught them how to build the Notre Dame, or if somebody from France went there, saw the Notre Dame, and then went back to Paris and was like, I've got an idea. So we leave that up to the DM. But we did, because it was so uncanny, we leaned into that. So we specifically said, if you're writing this nation, lean into this culture. It's not France, but it is fantasy inspired France.
Right, there are elements of that sort of touchstone of real world in it, and that also translates a bit into the system stuff as well, right? Because you have gunslingers and alchemists draw a lot from real world. Can you touch a little bit on how that decision came to be? Because I'm trying to remember. I don't remember any specific instances in the comic of a gunslinger.
No, the comic doesn't have those. That's where we took a few liberties. But that is because we were thinking, the comics were written in the 1985, I think. And obviously, if you were to cross over at that point, you would have, what would be the most high tech you have? A cassette player.
Sure.
If you cross over now, I'm bringing my smartphone and my MP3 player and my Bluetooth. And then we were like, well, we could just erase that and say, it's gone. You cross, it's gone. And you can't do that as the DM. You have that option of just going, sorry, too bad. But you also have the option of having a crossover, or the option of making people roll randomly to see if it crosses or not. But that then inspired the idea of, if I cross over with my smartphone, I want to be able to use it. And there's no Wi-Fi, there's no power outlets, there's no cell phone towers. So what now? And that led to the creation of the Artificer, for example, who could maybe turn it into this crystal-studded, weird magic tech steampunk thing that would effectively cast the spell Legendlore, and then function as if I'm looking something up on my crystal Google.
That's awesome.
And we liked that idea, so we did the gunslinger, the gunslinger, and the artificer specifically play into that idea of what if people took technology with them. But the alchemist is actually more of a mixed thing in the sense that there is science in West Azure, but it functions slightly different. It's alchemy, and not like we see alchemy nowadays, but like they saw alchemy in the time of Newton. Like, they viewed it as science. You could turn lead into gold. That was science. You just needed the right formula. And that is how we took alchemy into the realm. You can create potions that do this or do that. That is simply how science in this realm works. Right.
And that's it was a lot of fun. I had like I said, when I worked on it, I had the opportunity to work a little bit on some of that tech stuff, and it was a very cool approach to take. And I ran a demo of Legendlore at PAX U, I think, last year, and went with the, oh, well, you have everything on you that is physically on your person at this table, you know, sort of. And that led to so much, I found so much role playing, you know, as they made their way to the first settlement, and they immediately started to try to figure out, like, you know, well, what does this Bic lighter get me here? You know, what can I trade this for? So
exactly. I had one player who was like, can I trade my power bank? Because it's not like I can use it, but it's probably a weird electricity box to them. Yes, you can trade your power bank.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very cool. And to see those levels of see the way that the thought process engages for players in that first time, is very rewarding. I think it's a lot of fun. And there's aside from the comic itself, there's other media touchstones where this premise occurs.
Yeah, I had actually the same power bank player. They were in the realm and they needed a ride, and then the person who owned like the donkey cart was like, you can come with me, but I want, if you're coming with me, it's because I like company, so entertain me, tell me a story. And that player went, so once upon a time there was a man named Tony Stark, and and he just narrated the entire thing, and we had to cut him off at the end because we were like, no, not everyone has seen the Thanos bit yet. You can't tell this at the table. Spoilers. But he just narrated the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome.
And of course, the guy from the donkey cart was like, yeah, this is like 3 days of entertainment. That's fine. You can travel with me.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it offers for some very cool opportunities.
Yeah.
So system wise, are there other areas where, system and setting wise, I guess, are there other areas that you feel are very representative of how Legendlore and how the realm maybe diverge from sort of the standard D&D operations?
Well, we've got a few setting things. We specifically said, again, to go back to you can play yourself, it would be slightly awkward if one of my black friends were to cross over and be a black elf, and then she's the only black elf in the realm. So I didn't like that. So we specifically said all people come in all colors. They come in all genders. They come in all orientations. So no matter what you look like, when you cross, people are going to go, yeah. Because I want my friends to feel at home. My friends are diverse, so the game is diverse. That was one thing that I really like, where I think we made a good design decision. Another thing which was in the comics is that they don't have dragons. They've got one, but he's in disguise and evil. But they don't have, it doesn't have dragons. They're on the other side of the mountain range in West Azoth. I'm hoping that if the Kickstarter does well, people back the Kickstarter, because if it does well, I'm going to see if I can hustle Onyx Path into letting us delve a little deeper into West Azoth, and you will get your dragons, your dragon kin.
Well, there you go.
So it's got hair feet, which are unique. They're a little bit like halflings and a little bit like famous hairy feet people from Tolkien, but different. So there's that. They had the peculiarity. Well, it's not peculiar. It's peculiar in the sense that they changed it. We specifically went with the first run of, I think it was 22 comics as our base, because at some point you've got to just go, this is our content.
Right.
And in the first 22 comics, they specifically said that they don't have mixed heritage people. At one point, one of the humans from Earth falls in love with an elf, and then somebody says, oh, it's a pity that they can't have children. So we wrote that. We did say that people adopt a lot, so you can absolutely have an elven mom and a dwarven mom, and then you are a human child. That's fine. But apparently it doesn't happen biologically. But then in the later comics, suddenly it does. Mm-hmm. I'm attributing that entirely to magic.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
There you go. So so that's the setting. They also have they've got an underworld full of dead people, and they've got a demon world which is not quite like the Abyss, and it's not like the Hells. Those are different. It's got underworld and plague demons, and it's got pieces of the world falling through. And one thing it also had, that's the part that you wrote on, is they have rituals, and big demon summoning rituals that have a devastating effect on the caster. And what you can then do if you're evil is trick somebody else into casting this spell for you. But if you're good, what you can do is you can get a group of people together, and you're going to go, so we're all going to get hit with the world's nastiest migraine. But if we do this with 20 of us, nobody is going to die. So then you've got this community effort to build those, and I like community effort things. So so you've got a ritual system that relies a lot on preparation and working with large groups of people to pull it off so that nobody dies halfway through the spell.
Absolutely.
And what we did on a smaller scale is, because they also have a thing called mind block. Manthroac is the fancy word, but it's the mind block that if you cast too many spells, then bad things happen. You can't cast anymore and you go into coma and you don't wake up. And you and I brainstormed about that at the time. We wanted to keep the idea of that, but we didn't want to cripple our spellcasting players. So instead of making it a bad thing, we made it something that you can choose. Like, I'm going to use this spell effect and that spell effect and that spell effect. But then after the scene is over, you get hit with points of Manthroac, and those can be nasty. And I love that as a designer. That is like, you're in a bind and there's bad people coming at you from all sides, and there's an earthquake and a fire, and you need to cast some big spells now. But you're going to be in trouble later. And I always love it when my players solve current problems by creating future problems. Like, just kick that can down the road. We'll deal with that after we live. And I love that. And you wrote that, and I think the system works really well. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I think it works so well because we did so much brainstorming on it. Because I remember the first draft of what that looked like is very different than what is now in the book. But it also introduces probably one of my biggest, I guess, complaints, for lack of a better term, about 5th edition, is the absence. Like, life and death are an on and off switch in 5th edition, right? Like, you're either fine or dying. And with a situation like the way Manthroac works, it really introduces this mechanic of, Joey's over there giving his all, fighting full tilt through this entire battle, and then you walk over at the end of the battle and, Joey's slumped on a rock and gets to give you that last speech before his brains leak out of his ear, So I like that idea, the idea that you can, you can make those sort of sacrifice calls and say, all right, this has to be done.
And before people think that this is something that we spring on the player, you as a player, you can keep track of how many points of Manthroac you're accumulating, and you have the chart in front of you, so you can go, this is bad.
Right.
That's your choice. Make bad choices. That's always good advice in a role-playing game. Make bad choices.
Absolutely. It is definitely agency driven. You're not going to get surprised by it. And I think that is fair to say about pretty much, like, as a consistent design principle throughout it, is that the game is agency driven.
Exactly. It's fun if bad and unforeseen things happen to characters, but it's not fun if it happens to players. And in this case, the player and the character are partially the same person. So you get a lot of agency. We've got entire sections dedicated to your section 0 and talking about what you want to do in the game. Because player agency is so important. In this case, the player is partially also the character.
Right. There's a greater, I would think, a greater risk of bad bleed, to borrow a LARP term, because it's easy to get caught up in the moment, even when you have that extra level of distance. So I think it's really cool that there's so much of the book is dedicated to that. Do you want to? I don't know if this is something that's been touched on the Kickstarter yet at all. As a reminder, the Kickstarter is up right now. I'm going to paste that link in the chat. You should go back it for sure and get access to the manuscript. But can you touch on some of the like safety tools that are covered in it, and some of the material that contains regarding managing that separation and managing the agency?
Yeah. So we've got the lines and veils, which I'm assuming most of our viewers know, but the idea is that a line is a hard boundary and a veil is I'm fine if it's not me it's happening to, or it's fine if you fade to black. I remember I'm pretty terrified of sharks, and I was playing Changing the Lost, and we stepped through a realm and boom, we're on the water. And I was like, time out. I need to tell you now that if there is a shark, that is fine for my character, but I, Steffi, cannot be present, so I'll be in the hole. She's like, no, honey, there's no shark. I came up with things way worse than sharks, but there are no sharks. So, and that was fine because I am not terrified of the way worse things than sharks. I'm just terrified of sharks. But that would be, a line would be if I were to say no sharks, none whatsoever. And a veil would be if I said, it's fine if I, as the player, can step out into the hallway while you do that scene.
Gotcha.
So we've got that. We also deal a lot with the idea of you playing yourself, and we went into, because one of the earliest things we ran into that was also at the pitch stage is that if me, as I'm sitting here, were to fall into the realm, I would be hyper focused on getting back. I would feel like there are people that need me. I can't stay here. Right. I can't. So what we did is we said the easiest solution is that the DM switches the passage of time so that you can spend months in the realm and then you come back and there's just minutes gone. But what you could also do if you feel like it would just be too distracting to play as yourself is that you go back and you slightly tweak your own background. So I would be Steffi, but I made a couple of different life choices, and maybe I am more of a free agent, which would allow me to go into the realm. So you would still keep the essence of you, but maybe not bring all of you, because I can also imagine that there are people who maybe have a background and things that they carry with them that they don't want to carry with them in a game. So you can leave that behind. We're not forcing you to bring anything in. We're not saying you have to be you exactly as you are now and you can't change anything, so you have to cross over, and everything that you have now, no, it's fine if you want to go, I'm me, but I never developed depression. Right. Then that's fine. You know, be the person you want to be in this game. We want you to be who you want to be. That's basically it. And so we develop we devote a lot of time to that in the player chapter and in the DM chapter, and how to handle a game where people play themselves and where they do probably have a case of bad bleed, or maybe they have things like, I have issues about myself that I don't necessarily want to bring to the gaming table. Like, not everybody needs to know that I don't like my glasses. I don't know, maybe I don't want people to know that. So if I were to cross over, I would lose them, but I don't want people to know that about me for some reason. Right. You can change that. We're not forcing you to do anything. We want you to have fun.
Right. And I think that there would be in the absence of those tools, I think there would be a very great risk of the fun being sapped immediately out. Because when you take away, I would say taking away a player's agency is never a good call, but particularly in this instance, it's very cool to see that there are tools that have been dedicated to ensuring that everybody sitting at the table has what they need to engage with the content in a fun way. And it sounds like a lot of those tools can be rolled over and repurposed for your other games. I've heard of lines and veils before. I've witnessed people use them in session zeros online, but I've never played in a game that utilized them. I always just use an X card. But it sounds like a super cool tool.
I would always, with a new group, I would always do a session zero and lines and veils. But it's important to also know that you don't necessarily have to give all of your lines and veils as you start.
Right.
For example, the shark thing, like that comes up when you go underwater and you're like, oh, I should have brought that up. So about sharks. But I would pretty much recommend that in any game that you do with new people. But obviously with my own group, I've known them for 20 years. Oh my God. That is a long time. Yeah, I think I've known them for about 20 years, and I don't do lines and fills with them anymore.
Right, you've found your way around them. Well, and
Yeah.
there are things, we are fantastically complicated creatures psychologically. There are things that, bother a person or are upsetting to a person that maybe they don't think about until they encounter,
Yeah.
like, just first example that comes to mind when we first launched the channel, it was right during the Aberrant Kickstarter, and I was running an Aberrant game with Dixie, and I had no idea that like eating sounds bothered her. And so I was mimicking like a sound that one of the bad, one of the evil creatures was making, but in a way that really got under her skin. And that's not the kind of thing that you would necessarily, I think, even as a player, you might not think of that to bring up during a session 0. You know what I mean?
I would never think of that. I would never think. But that's why the X card is so good, because that allows you to immediately go like, hold on. Yeah.
Right. Or
plus,
even, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and the opposite is also true. There are also definitely things that I would immediately assume people are not using in their game unless they specifically give me a content warning for them.
Right.
Like, well, I think we all have the same topics in mind, but there is a couple of things that unless people specifically tell me this is a game that features these things, I wouldn't even expect them to be in the game. I would totally expect people to give me a heads up.
Right. And I don't think, I've always been a huge advocate of a wide berth of artistic freedom as long as the audience is well aware of what they're getting. I love, like in the way that the MPAA ratings work. I don't necessarily love the way they're always applied, but I love the idea that, you have this thing where you can look at it and you can say, I can generally expect this level of content and nothing, worse. I think that there's very much, even if you're using things that are relatively innocuous, I run games that involve blood and gore constantly, and I try to make a point to let everyone know going in, it's going to get gory. Because it's a narrative tool I use a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody is saying that you can't use those topics. People are saying you need to give people a heads up so that they can opt in or opt out.
Right, because
that's basically it.
Yeah, again, springing it on a character is fine. Springing it on a player, not okay.
Less. Yeah, exactly. Although there are probably also some, I am going to go there and say that there are some things that people need to stop using as part of their tragic backgrounds, because honestly, you can come up with something more creative. But that is me. But nobody is saying that you can't. There's no police going to come kick in the door if you use them in your game. We're just saying you need to give your players a heads up so that they can choose whether this is for them or not. And that's also what we say in this session 0 part of the book, is it's entirely possible that after you talked about all this stuff, like the session 0 and the lines and the veils and the what you want and what you don't want, it's entirely possible that at that point some people are going to say, this is not my game. And that's fine. That doesn't mean you are a bad DM. That doesn't mean they are a bad player. It just means that in this specific game, you have different goals and they are not compatible.
Right.
You can play a different game later.
Well, and you do have the option too, and I can't stress enough how cool I think it is to have that option to gear shift down and say, okay, I'm going to be a Realmborn. You know what I mean? I'm going to still engage with the game. I'm just not going to engage with it on this level if it doesn't suit my comfort.
Yeah, you could.
I think that was really smart. I think it was a really smart decision.
Yeah, that does offer a bit more distance between you and the character. Just go, I'm not doing the whole me thing. I'm grumpy the dwarf.
Right, yeah. And
that's valid.
Yeah, cool. That's totally cool. So if anybody in the chat has any questions, now would be a great time to ask with the word question in all caps, because we are about 10 minutes away from buttoning this whole thing up.
Yeah.
And as we are, I do want to remind you once again that if you've not done so, head over to Kickstarter and back Legendlore. It's up right now. There's, I want to say, well, I can actually look and tell you exactly how many days are left. We have 19 days left to go. And you can also now, if you've been, if you're a fan of Onyx Path's properties, whether you've come here through World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, Trinity Continuum, Scion, whatever your vector in was, maybe you haven't even checked out 5th edition yet. Now you have a chance. You can back the Legendlore Kickstarter for, I think, as little as $1 and get access to the manuscript. It's $1 or $5 you get access to the manuscript. So you can sort of look at that ahead of time. You can also add on Scarred Lands core book with your Legendlore support at the Kickstarter now and get the core book for Scarred Lands cheaper too. So it's really a great time to hop into the 5th edition side of what Onyx Path is doing. So, Steffi, is there, I know we've kind of touched briefly on many aspects of the game. Is there something about Legendlore that we have not yet discussed that you feel should really be brought to the forefront and people should know about?
No, I think we covered everything. I think we covered the whole cross-pollination between Earth and the realm. We've covered the diversity. We've covered the player agency. We've covered the you're playing you. We've covered the strange things, which are items that are partially Earth and partially realm. So we've covered most of them. Actually, one fun that I'm a game designer, so this might be slightly nerdy. One fun thing that I liked is that when I read the comics, it was clear to me early on that Legendlore has more of a law versus chaos conflict than an evil versus good. It has an evil dragon. Sorry, sure. He's a person who's definitely not an evil dragon in disguise, trying to conquer the world. So he is evil. He's very, very evil. But he's made not an alliance, but he made an agreement with one of the lawful nations that they were going to put up a wall, which is bad. And he was going to stay out of their territory and they were going to stay in. And they weren't going to interfere with his plans for the world and he was going to bother them. Which is a bad deal because eventually he's going to be finished conquering everything and then it's just you and your stupid wall.
Right. And when he runs out of other land, then...
Eventually, yes. But so we had this lawful nation who was more dedicated to being lawful than to being good. They're a lawful good people. But when they had to choose between do the right thing and do the lawful thing, they are currently going with the lawful thing. And I hope that when you play the game and you go there, you persuade them to, choose the good thing, because law and right are not always the same thing.
That is true.
But so in the DM chapter, we do talk about that a little bit. Like, what if you really wanted to lean into law versus chaos instead of evil versus good? Because most of D&D 5th edition does have that. It doesn't do alignments like old games does. It's much more flexible, but the big conflict is still evil people versus good people, right. Which is also the basic concept of Legendlore as we wrote it. But we do in the DM chapter, we do have advice on what if you wanted to do law versus chaos instead, which I like. But like I said, that might be a slightly nerdy thing.
Oh, no, I think it's totally cool. We could nerd out about alignment all day long.
Yeah.
Does the Legendlore book contain references to the standard 9 alignments, or is that just sort of inferred from the overall larger struggles?
Yeah, that's inferred. You can definitely, Ardonia is definitely lawful, and they are probably good. They might be neutral on a bad day, but it's mostly inferred. But that is also because D&D 5th edition, and I think that's a good choice on their part. They have let go of alignments a bit because people are not like that. A person might do the right thing on Monday and then the bad thing on Tuesday, and
they've really, I think, like they've really just broadened those definitions and in a good way, to the point where it's really just kind of like a role-playing touchstone, right? Like this is kind of your normal operating procedure. And I say this a lot, and this is by all quick disclaimer, this is my personal opinion, and I am saying it with my tongue somewhat in my cheek, but I tend to believe that humanity on the whole is lawful evil, in the sense that we will generally follow rules and generally act in our own interest.
The arc of the universe trends towards the light. It's just been a bumpy road recently. Extremely bumpy, but we will get there.
I hope you are right.
Okay, but you know how I know that we will get there? Because there will always be people like you and me who are going to drag the world, kicking and screaming, back on track.
I hope
as
so.
long as there are good people, I believe we will win. It's just been extremely, extremely rocky. And I do currently think there are too many people who are choosing law over good. So, F the law, break the law if the law is bad.
Absolutely. So, and do that especially in East Azoth by backing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We are talking like, yes, we are talking about the game. We are not.
But yeah, so I'm just checking. I'm not seeing any major questions pop up. Let's see. Just some mentions of using hand signals for LARP during games to check on one another, which I think is a really cool technique for safety stuff. Oh, I remember the other thing I wanted to touch base with you about was the legend aspect of it, right?
Right. Oh my God, we forgot that. Yeah. That's Legendlore. Yes. So when you cross over, you get a legend, and you don't have to design that on your first game. You can play a few games and then go, oh, I figured out what my legend is. But your legend is your big overarching story, like Mother of Dragons. And once you have that, once you have your basic idea, you design it and you get bonuses on some things, and then there are points you get for if you follow your legend, and there are also points that you get for when you follow your legend when it's a bad idea. But you get points for that, and you can use those points. They go into a communal pool. You don't get to keep them for yourself. Like I said, I like community projects. They go into a communal pool, and you can use them to introduce narrative elements, like that guard. Yeah, he likes me. Or I'm locked in here, but I'm going to be able to talk him into letting me go because I played a game of pool in the bar yesterday and he was there and we have a report. So I'm gonna so you can introduce narrative elements. You can also just get bonuses and rolls and things like that. And the fun part is that you get to design your own legend. We've got 5 examples, and we actually do have a Kickstarter pledge level where you can work with me or another author to design a legend that then goes into the book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we've got 5 pre-made, and we walk you exactly through how they work, what you need to focus on, but you write your own legend when you play the game, and then that is hopefully how your narrative arc will end. And the fun part is that you, the player, choose the legend, but you, the character, might not necessarily be on board with that. You might be like, I don't want to be the Mother of Dragons. That just sounds horrible. Yeah, well, good luck. That's your fate now. So, but yeah, you can back me. You can back the Kickstarter at the level, and we will work with. We've got a crossing level on the Kickstarter where I will work with you to design a crossing for you. So your bedroom wardrobe is a crossing, and we will write that for you. And we've also got a level where we will write your legend. And help you flesh out the mechanics on that.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, so lots of different ways to get involved in the Kickstarter. Lots of different opportunities to get your fingerprints in it and to really, become the hero yourself. Definitely head over and back that, and spread the word on all your social media. I know that times are a bit tough out there for some folks. So definitely, you know, having something where you have a chance to get away, to engage with some folks. There's a lot of people that are doing tabletop, online right now. I know that Astral Tabletop is offering all their services for free right now. So there's ways you can get into this stuff and, pass some of that extra time that you've got while you're chilling out and take your mind off of, I'd rather be fighting dragons than
yes,
viruses.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. There is no virus in the realm.
Yeah. So
come to the realm and you don't have to social distance.
Exactly.
But I'm joking, but I do. Please do the social distancing thing. Just
for real.
Stick with it for a little while. Be a good person. Protect your fellow man and protect your fellow people, and just do the social distancing thing. We will get through this.
And then we can all get back to gaming in person again.
Exactly. It's just, this is one of those rocky patches.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I hope everyone pulls through.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. Tamshu, the roving DM, said thank you for your time and speaking with us. So I'm passing that on to you, Steffi. Thank you for your time and speaking with us. Thank you all for your time and joining us and watching this. And again, if you're watching this either in the Twitch archive, which you can access by subscribing, if you're an Amazon Prime user, you get one free sub a month, and we would love to be your free sub. Which reminds me, I need to re-up my sub, which I'm doing right now. You can also see it. This will be up on YouTube, I'm fairly certain, relatively soon. So just check the end date on the Kickstarter. So it's 19 days from now. Let's see if it tells me a date, because I'm terrible at math, which I know is not a good trait for a game writer to have, but it's true. April 9th at 1 p.m. Central, so 2 p.m. Eastern, is when this ends. So make sure you're getting involved beforehand, spreading the word. Steffi, any final thoughts before we button this up?
No. I would invite everyone to join the Kickstarter. Let me persuade Onyx Path to let me write a little bit about West Azov. I don't know if they will let me. But at least let me go in there and go, we made a stretch goal.
There you go.
Let me decide what it's going to be. I would love to do that. And bring you, a wide variety of things that we aren't seeing yet. Because East Azov has a lot of things going on for it. But there's a couple of goodies at West Azov that I would love to write about. And we want to bring you a quick start and all those good things. So please do support us, because I would love to do more in this world, because it's fabulous.
Absolutely. And likewise, I had a blast writing for it, and I want to do more. So you have to go back to Kickstarter now and push us to enough stretch goals that not only can Steffi do more, but she can then hire me to do more.
Yeah, exactly. That's just...
So, thank you so much, Steffi. Thank you all so much at home.
Thank you for having me.
Please spread the word and take care of yourselves, one another. Wash your hands. Cough into your arm.
Be well.
Be good.
Yeah.
See you later.